Mrs. Scudder, when did you first come to Kuwait?
We came in September 1939, and before then we were in Jerusalem in 1937 to 38, and then we went to Amara, Iraq for 1 year, and then we came to Kuwait in 39. And since then we've been here most of the time.
You arrived with your husband?
I arrived with my husband.
Mrs. Scudder, when did you first come to Kuwait?
We came in September 1939, and before then we were in Jerusalem in 1937 to 38, and then we went to Amara, Iraq for 1 year, and then we came to Kuwait in 39. And since then we've been here most of the time.
You arrived with your husband?
I arrived with my husband. We were married in 37 in Chicago, and we had a happy honeymoon through Europe on our way over here.
Mrs. Scudder, does the day hold a particular memory for you when you arrived in Kuwait?
Yes, we came through the Jahra gate, and we were driving in a car coming from Basra. There were 4 donkeys with outfits on their back coming toward us, and I said to the driver, do the trees move here? Because I had never seen this before. There were only 9 trees in all of Kuwait. 8 trees were on our yard, on the mission compound. 1 was inside of Jahra Gate. Everything was sand. Everything was dry. We saw some sheep coming in with their shepherd, and it was interesting to see how the sheep went to each door. As the shepherd would go, the sheep knew his home. And this amazed me a great deal, and I was so pleased to see this. But it was very unusual when we first came to stay here.
Mrs. Scudder, what brought you and your husband to Kuwait?
Dr. Scudder and I first came to Kuwait as missionaries, medical missionaries, to care for the sick of Kuwait. We arrived here and we moved into an old house which was standing in Halali Street. We then moved into this house in 1942, in the present house. We found the people who came to us very much concerned who we were, and really not wanting to come to be treated. And finally they found that we were here to help them. The women who came with their babies, they were malnutrition, trachoma, pneumonia. They had many diseases because of the flies. The sanitation was very bad, no proper sanitation, and the flies would sit in the baby's eyes, and so they all had very bad eyes. And diarrhea, tuberculosis were the main diseases at that time. And venereal diseases, there was many patients, but we soon gained the confidence of the patients, and they would come in even from the desert, the Bedouin. But in order for Dr. Scudder to see the patient's eye, he said, "I must see your eye in order to treat it." And so she said, "The only way I can show you my eye is to tear a hole in her milfa, and for him to treat the eye." Gradually, they soon became aware that the male doctor was not there to see them, but to cure them and to take care of their needs.
What were your working conditions like here, Mrs. Scudder?
Oh, it was very difficult, but I finally learned to cope with what we had. Soap was sparse. Cleaning cloths were sparse. Our churches would send us torn up sheets for bandages. We had no bandages, and you couldn't buy them anywhere. The medicine was sparse. Uh, Finally, sulfa came into being, and doctor, when he would operate, there were no fans and no electricity, and I would make him a big tennis Turkish towel cap, and every so often I would wipe his brow, but I'd make just so his face was out, and all this would be Turkish towel and tied back so that nothing dripped on the patient. And he would have, we would have a man with a feather duster fanning the flies away so it wouldn't get near the operating room table. It was just amazing. But as I say, we had very few infections. We sterilized everything well, except doctor would have to put in the incision this sulfa powder so that we didn't have too many infections. The boys would wear their green-covered coats. The women they insisted upon wearing their abbas for a long time, those who were working in the hospital. But finally we got them to take off their black abba and wear a dress because I would tell them, you have to be clean. You have to be clean in order to teach the patient cleanliness as well. And so we finally were able to get over this hurdle, and then we got mops and pails, and finally it was a blessing when we moved into our new hospital where we had tiles and everything like this. But at first it was very difficult. The patients would sit on the veranda outside in order to keep cool. Of course, it was very hot in those days. But I think it's warmer now because we're enclosed so much more. In those days, there were very few people living nearby. And so it was, we were quite open.
Mrs. Scudder, do you recall any special incident with your patients?
Yes, one night we were sitting together in our house, and the door knocked, someone at the door knocked, and Dr. Scudder went to the door, and it was the Bedouin man who had come in. The doctor said, "Athlan was Athlan, come in." And he came in and he sat down, and they talked for a while, and then he said, "Do you remember, doctor, you operated on me?" And when my time in the hospital was over, I had no money. And I said to you, "What will I do? I have no money." And he said, never mind. That's all right. If you ever have money later on, and you feel that you can give something for the hospital, you're welcome to bring it. Otherwise, don't worry about it." And so he went away. This was about 5 years. He went away. He went away and came back. This is when he came back to doctor, and he said, "Doctor, I have brought the money that I owed you. I didn't forget." And doctor was so amazed and so pleased, with such a wonderful smile and such a wonderful heart. He said, "Oh no, I couldn't take your money, but the way you have brought it, I shall always remember. And your gift is your smile.
Mrs. Scudder, why was the American Mission Hospital closed in 1967?
Our hospital was closed in 1967 because a group of men came out, consultants came out from California and New York to see our hospital and to see whether our hospital was needed in Kuwait. They'd heard so much about the facilities, medical facilities that had sprung up in Kuwait, and they felt that one of our hospitals should be closed. Now, our hospital was full at the time, and we had specialists. We had Dr. Fell here and Dr. Scudder, and many other doctors working, and Dr. Oman and Dr. Nogri. All of these doctors were working in our hospital. We felt that we here in Kuwait, that our hospital should not be closed. And the Kuwaiti people felt that it should not be closed. And they were so surprised when the consultants came back from Bahrain, and they had a meeting, and they said, they announced to us that our hospital was the one chosen to be closed. It was because of the number of hospitals that had grown up in Kuwait. So then we decided that we would go home and set up private practice. When the Kuwaitis, some of them heard that we were going to go home, they said, oh, no, no, you're not, the Scudders are not going to leave us. We want them to stay in Kuwait. The hospital's been closed, but we want them to stay. So when we saw that they would like us to stay, we said, all right, whatever you want us to do. And so they said, well, I think we're going to change the old American Mission Men's Hospital into a pediatric hospital for the government. And we'll try it for 2 years. But we'd like Dr. and Miss Scudder to be in charge. Well, when our board heard this, they said, oh no, then the Scudders must come home, because it would be just a Scudder hospital. And so they said, all right, if you can't do that, then if you will go to the big American or to the big government school and start, fix it up for a geriatric hospital, that would be help us a great deal. So Dr. Scudder and I went off to this school. We accepted and went off to the school to see what it was like. Well, the windows were poor, and it was very poorly set up. But anyway, we said, all right, you do this, you do that, put in elevators and tile the floors and fix the windows. And so we left all these orders and we went off to India for 3 months leave. When we came back, the Sheikh Saad, who was in the Ministry of Defense, had asked that doctor see him. So doctor went to see him, and he asked if we would go to the military hospital. He would be chief medical officer, and I would go as the nurse advisor. So we went along. We went trying to find the hospital. It took us 2 days to find where the military hospital was. But we finally found it out on the 6th Ring Road. And we went over and saw it, and people were amazed how we got inside of the military hospital in street clothes. But we said we had been asked to come to see if we would like it. And of course, we did enjoy it. So this is why we stayed in Kuwait and how we stayed in Kuwait. We have been working in the military hospital since 1967. Doctor as chief medical officer, and I have been director of nursing. We have changed the hospital a great deal. In those old days, all the verandas had to be enclosed, and we did a great deal of remodeling, and it's still small, but it has greatly improved.
Mrs. Scudder, your husband died in 1975, and he is in fact buried in Kuwait. Why did you stay on after he died?
I stayed on after Doctor died because I was encouraged to. Um, they didn't want me to go. I have one son in Bahrain who is married and has 3 children. I have one son who's in Saudi Arabia who has one son. I have one daughter in Moshi, Tanzania, who's an ophthalmologist, and they all seem so much around me that I felt that seeing they still wanted me in Kuwait, in the hospital here, and I love the people, and it was a great blessing just to be with those whom I loved and had worked with so long. And I think this is one of the reasons why I continue to stay here. But my children and my family at home, especially my family at home, urge me to come home and say that I've done enough here. And my children say, Mother, I'm going to make a film of you just one more year.
That's lovely. And in fact, Mrs. Scudder, you are still working here 6 days a week in the hospital.
Yes, but I think I should cut it down to 5. But anyway, it's a joy to be able to continue working with those that I've worked with and have helped to build the hospital up. And I know the people. And it's a joy just to see them coming and going. And I often hear people say, "MashaAllah, is Mrs. Scudder still here?"
That's very nice to hear that.
Before you all go, I would like to say one thing to the government. Please keep our big hospital and make it into the medical museum as I have been hearing about. It would be a great blessing and a wonderful for the people of Kuwait and for those of us who started it. Thank you, and thank you all for coming and seeing my home and talking with me.